Welcome, and thank you for taking time to learn about the Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. Prior to this year, I had never heard the term Integrated Resource Plan, but I learned of it through my affiliation with Valley Watch, where I'm a board member. In the past, I've attended and submitted comments at utility rate increase hearings, but as I learned about the IRP process, I became excited because this is where ratepayers can be proactive in how their electricity is being generated and ultimately how much we pay for electricity. All the utility power plants, all the operating cost, all the fuel cost, all the pollution control cost are paid by the ratepayer, you. The utility merely is paid a bit over these costs to run the operations on your behalf. The utility is guaranteed both a market and a profit. So unlike non-regulated companies, the burden to reduce cost and to ensure the operations are lean and efficient falls to the customers and to the government. The IRP process that we are asking you to participate in will allow you, the ratepayer, to examine the running of the utility to ensure that the operations are lean and efficient and that steps are in place to ensure that they stay that way. Integrated resource planning began in the late 1980s as states looked for a way to respond to the oil embargoes and to the nuclear cost overruns of the previous decade. Most states have IRP requirements. In Indiana, you can find the requirements in the Indiana Code Title 170, Article 4, Rule 7. The current Vectren IRP was issued in 2011. It's available on Vectren's website. 2 stakeholder meetings are planned for the development of the 2014 IRP. You may register through the Vectren website for the first meeting scheduled on March 20th. In preparation for the meeting, I've read the Vectren 2011 IRP, looked at IRPs issued by other utilities, read the regulations, and read articles related to the topics within the IRP. I don't consider myself an expert, but I want to share with you what I've learned. My hope is that with many eyes and many brains focused on the IRP, we'll develop the best plan for our community. The IRP covers a lot of ground and can be overwhelming. We would be thrilled if you would focus on the parts that interest you and contribute your efforts on those. Particularly, anyone that has participated in lean management or cost-cutting initiatives at their workplace are encouraged to help. Vectren South is a vertically integrated utility. When looking at the IRP, it's important to know the structure of the utility company because our utility, Vectren South, purchases goods and services from other businesses owned by the same parent company, Vectren Corporation. There is a built-in disincentive to purchase those goods and services at the least cost to the ratepayers. There is also a built-in incentive to purchase excess goods and services from those sibling companies. Keep this in mind while performing your reviews. The questions to ask while looking at the IRP is, are fuel costs competitive, fair, and necessary? Are infrastructure services costs competitive, fair, and necessary? Is providing power to the wholesale market profitable to the ratepayers? We're not just being paranoid when asking you to question these issues. There are potential conflicts of interest, and in 2010, the utility paid Vectren Fuels, one of their sibling companies, a higher rate for the coal than what they were charging for that same coal to other utilities. That's according to the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission records. On the left are resources listed in the 2011 IRP and updated with resources listed in the 2012 annual report. You see a mix of company-owned coal, company-owned gas, contracted landfill gas, contracted coal, and contracted wind. You also see demand-side management resources for use at peak load. Now, look at resources used in 2012 as reported in the 2012 annual report. 97% coal and 3% natural gas. Why? We, the ratepayers, paid to build those 6 gas facilities, and we pay to maintain those gas facilities. Are they being efficiently used? We paid to secure wind resources, but didn't use them. The IRP needs to show the cost to produce electricity from each plant, and then include which resources they actually intend to use, so the ratepayers know that the resource providing the lowest cost to the ratepayer is being used. The 2011 IRP claimed that 4.6% of retail sales would be from wind and landfill gas. That didn't happen. Why? Besides a complete lack of information regarding how much each resource costs the ratepayer and which resource they actually use, I noticed that they don't tell how much of the actual peak summer demand, which is 1,259 megawatts, came from the wholesale demand. It appears to me that the operations are not lean. Operations are not diversified to decrease risk, and there is too much reserve margin. The reserve margins for the past 5 years range from 17 to 28%. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation sets a target reserve margin of 13.75%. Did the total peak load include any power produced for the wholesale market? That's important to know. We should be planning only to cover ratepayer needs. Also, usage will drop about 80 megawatts in 2016 when SABIC begins generating most of their own power. All these details should be covered in the 2014 IRP. I noticed that besides the power plants ratepayers have paid to build and maintain, the company also has a 1.5% ownership interest in Ohio Valley Electric Company. I Googled Ohio Valley Electric Company, and Wikipedia told me in May of 2013, researchers at the University of Massachusetts Amherst revealed that as of 2009, OVEC was the worst water polluter in the United States. The toxic hazard of the pollution caused by OVEC was estimated to be almost double that of the next worst polluter. In 2009, OVEC directly released 40,000 pounds of toxic waste into surface water without treatment. We don't need that kind of liability. We have excess reserve margin, and we are not provided enough information to know just how much excess reserve margin we have, because we don't know how much of the peak load is coming from wholesale sales. Then I noticed that Vectren makes significant revenue from wholesale sales. So, ratepayers pay for the plants, the operation, maintenance, pollution control, and liabilities associated with the pollution, yet Vectren gets the first $7.5 million profit. Then they share profit with us 50%. Really? At best, they should get a 7% commission on the sale of our property. We don't need to maintain resources for wholesale sales. We need lean, diversified resources for the lowest cost electric rates for retail ratepayers. The IURC set the $7.5 million allowance as part of the 2011 rate hike decision. It used to be $10 million. Note how important it is to know these details and comment on them to the IURC. Besides paying attention to rate increase hearings, we need to be aware of what's happening in the state legislation. Vectren contributes to political candidates, and they have lobbyists. Vectren is paying attention, and they are getting results. Senate Bill 251 was passed in April of 2011. That bill allows the utility to increase your rate for certain costs without any rate increase hearing. As you review the IRP, make sure that the utility doesn't plan to make improvements to plants that shouldn't even be kept in light of excess reserves and plants that are projected to become too expensive to maintain. Because you'll be paying for those improvements, and there won't be any rate increase hearing to let you object. It will be a done deal. Now is the time to speak up. One potential expense that the coal plants might face is in the regulations concerning coal ash waste disposal and ash ponds. The company estimates capital expenditures to comply could exceed $100 million if the most stringent of the alternatives is selected. In addition, annual compliance costs could increase by as much as $5 million. A carbon tax is pretty much a certainty. How much it will be, we're not sure, but per megawatt hour generated, FB Cully 2 is the most expensive. Other pollution control expenses the coal plants will likely need that will be paid for by SB 251 are listed on this slide. Already, your rate includes expenses for a $32 million upgrade at A.B. Brown. The investment is expected to pay off over the next 40 years. Who really believes that we will be burning coal in 40 years? No more investment in coal. We need to diversify. I attended a webinar that was hosted by the Union of Concerned Scientists. The authors of the study, entitled Ripe for Retirement, an Economic Analysis of the U.S. Coal Fleet, was presented. As you can see, Indiana has over 3,500 megawatt of coal-generated power plants that don't make financial sense as compared to existing natural gas combined cycle, even if you don't add a carbon tax to the analysis. I sent an email to the study authors and asked if they could provide their findings specifically for the Vectren plants. As you can see, FB Cully 2 is ripe for retirement now compared to existing natural gas combined cycle, as well as to compare to wind power with production tax credits. Once a $20 carbon price enters the analysis, all that work for is ripe for retirement compared to existing natural gas combined cycle. FB Cully 3 is ripe for retirement compared to new natural gas combined cycle and a $20 carbon price. I expect the Vectren 2014 IRP to indicate their analysis of these same scenarios and plan accordingly. Elon Musk, who started PayPal and then sold it, then founded Tesla, is also involved with SolarCity. SolarCity installs solar panels to customers with no upfront cost. The customer pays SolarCity monthly payments for the panels, and those payments are less than their electric bill would have been without the solar panels. SolarCity has since purchased a peer-to-peer lending company so that investors could get into the action of lending money to people to get panels with no upfront cost. Now, Tesla is opening a gigafactory to produce batteries that can store solar energy so the customers will no longer need to be tied to the grid. That cuts utilities out completely. Utilities need to jump in and figure out how to profit from the new business environment instead of being left out. How can utilities get into the business of solar? Some examples might be net metering and solar payment options, rebates, loans, but I'll defer to our local solar contractors who could probably provide the best suggestions on this. There's also a changing business environment in which manufacturers, especially those selling internationally, will likely be asked to provide the carbon footprint of their products. Manufacturers using coal-generated electricity in their manufacturing processes will be disadvantaged with a high carbon footprint. Continued high use of coal may prevent new companies from coming to the veteran service area. This table shows how the current IRP reports emissions. That's not acceptable. They need to report actual emissions, not just a few factors that combined with usage would lead to the number generated. Also, the projected emissions need to be based on how they plan to generate the power. For example, the table shown earlier indicated significant gas and wind resources, but in actual use, electricity was generated by 97% coal. That means they need to show emissions based on the resources to be used. Also, they need to indicate drops in emissions expected based on planned pollution control additions. Here's an example of an acceptable emissions reporting chart. This needs to be done for sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, mercury, PM2.5, and carbon dioxide. They need to chart each plant's historical and future emissions. Part of the demand-side resources include savings from efficiency programs. Legislation regarding those programs are pending. Utilities are compensated if they can show their efficiency programs reduce usage. The rules for that compensation can be found in Title 170, Article 4, Rule 8. It makes financial sense for a veteran to continue the programs even if not required by legislation. Senate Bill 251 not only allowed veterans to increase your rates without a rate increase hearing, it also set up a renewable energy portfolio requirement that is purely voluntary. Although in the 2012 Veteran Annual Report they claim 5% of its electricity is being provided by clean energy, this contradicts their earlier statement that electricity was 97% coal and 3% gas generated in 2012. After looking at the reports and the additional articles I've read, my conclusion is that for the lowest utility rates, We need as many ratepayers as possible to participate in the legislative processes, because corporate will be. We also need participation in the IRP process to see that operations are lean and efficient. And we also need ratepayers to participate in rate hearings. A field hearing is tentatively set for mid-April. Thank you.